Good morning, Noblesville. Happy Monday in December. It's the holidays. We got a lot going on this morning. All the more reason to have a little check-in here on Mental Health Monday. Right, Kristen Boice?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Jenson, for having me today.
So always so happy to have you join us. Kristen, I hope you know I get more and more compliments on you, and I hear different groups that I'm sure are reaching out to you to engage you, which is exactly what we've been trying to I think one of the biggest goals over the past 9 months has been to elevate this conversation around mental health. So I'm sure you are getting inundated by calls and requests of people wanting to talk with you. So I'm excited about that. I hope you are too.
I am so passionate about this. My one goal I write down every single day in my journal is to change the global conversation around mental health. And with your assistance, we're able to offer support during this really difficult time. And a lot of people are having COVID fatigue. So I thank you so much for providing this platform for us to help and assist and be of service during this time.
No, happy to do it. You know, we have a mayor's youth council every year that just got started up a few months ago with the 2020-2021 season. I think they're looking forward to focusing on mental health too. So, which is exciting to have high schoolers starting to talk about mental health as well, because that'll just translate across the board. So anyways, it is December 7th, 2020, Monday morning, Mental Health Monday. I'm just honored to have so many people join us on this day. We're going to get started with some square breathing. But before we do, I want to just acknowledge, Kristen, I know I always say that I utilize square breathing. I can tell you just from a very personal standpoint, the last couple of weeks have been a little trying in our office and in my life, in our city. We've had some real heavy conversations, some really tough conversations, which we know we're going to have as a community, not even around COVID, but around gravel pits and roads and stuff that are really harboring some tough emotions in folks, myself included. So square breathing, I say that just because square breathing has been really instrumental for me the last 2 weeks. So I just want to personally say thank you, because it has been a tough couple weeks. So that's why we're here, and I'll let you take it away with a little exercise to get everybody warmed up for our conversation today.
And that warms my heart that you're putting this into practice and it's helping you during tough conversations, because that's what this is all about. We are going to have hard conversations, and I encourage people to keep having them. And in order to tolerate that and lean into the discomfort, that's what square breathing can offer us. It can offer us a way to calm, get our head clear, and communicate, hopefully in a way where we can listen, to understand and connect. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with putting our feet on the floor, and this helps kind of center us and ground us for these conversations in this difficult time we're in. And then what we can do is we're going to inhale through our nose for 4. We're going to hold. The hold is super important. That way we are taking the time and the space for our body to recalibrate. And then it's a slow exhale, like you're cooling soup, through your mouth. So let's do it together. Feet on the floor. Inhale through your nose. Hold. And slowly exhale out your mouth. I recommend 5 breaths at least every hour. Let's do another one together. Inhale. Slow exhale, letting go. You can continue at your own pace at home. And I recommend doing this whenever, wherever you can. You'll see me around my house breathing all the time in my car. Not doing a lot of driving right now. When I am, I'm breathing. And what you'll find is your kids, your grandkids, your spouse will start kind of mirroring your breathing. As long as you're doing it on a regular basis and consistent, it's a game changer for family systems, not only personally, but it takes generations. It really does go down the line in terms of helping people know how to cope with what's going on right now. And this is kind of the first step.
Awesome. Well, thank you for walking us through that exercise. You know, Chris and I laugh because every week we average about 2,000 people that view this program throughout the week, which is awesome. And so if you're on this morning, feel free to type a quick note and say hi. If you watch during the week, let us know you're watching. If you want, only if you feel comfortable, but you're welcome to say hi at any point in time during the show. If you have any questions, obviously a topic that you want us to touch on, we're flexible. We're ready to go here this morning. This is all about you. So please take a moment, tell us hi, and how much, like I said, if you have any questions, please let us know. So it is the holidays. We are knee deep. Before we got on, Kristen, I was telling you that we went on a carriage ride last night through downtown Noblesville. We went to Mateo's for dinner. I overate majorly, but that's okay. But while that's a magical time for so many, it's also a very anxiety-ridden time. It's really a stressful time. I was reminded the other day by a good friend, Patrick Probst, who's a loyal listener as well, that people are carrying around a lot of tension right now. So can we talk about some coping mechanisms that we can work ourselves through during this time at any age level? If you want to hit anything specific from grandparents to parents, let's talk about how we deal with holiday stress in a already really funky year that's already stressful in our personal lives. Add on the holidays. So let's talk a little bit about that, if you wouldn't mind, about how we handle that.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on right now. We have COVID fatigue. People are sick and tired of the whole thing, and they want to go back to how it was. So we're dealing with a lot of grief. And now we had Thanksgiving we got through. Now we're going to have the holidays coming up. And what's happening is not going to be the same as it traditionally has been. Just like 2020 has been for all of us, it's changed. And so the first thing I want to say is we've got to take time to process what we're feeling emotionally. You know, I'm big into this. We cannot move through this challenging time without processing what we're going through. So it's really processing, then acknowledging. And so how do we acknowledge each other? One, we start a conversation saying, how are you feeling? And they'll go, I'm fine. And I go, no, really, I've done this so many times. No, really, I really want to know how you're doing. They're like, I'm not doing well. I'm angry. I'm tired. I feel lonely. I'm depressed. I feel anxious. I'm afraid. And I kind of feel disgusted. I'm just over it. And I go, it's okay. Let it out. Like, what we do is we're trying to pretend like we're okay. Some people are eating their feelings. They're binge watching things, which nothing wrong with that. We're just noticing that when we're under stress, we tend to regress. We tend to go back to patterns that we might have tried to make some movement on breaking. And what I want to say is have some self-compassion for yourself. Let's all hold a space of we're doing the best we can. And I know that's a tough acknowledgement point to say, but we are. At the end of the day, this is not easy. We're having to make pivots. We're having to change. And there's a lot of grief and loss. And we cannot have this conversation without acknowledging grief and loss. We're grieving over the way things were. Even if they weren't great, they were at least felt a little more predictable than they do now. People are afraid and feel uncertain. There's a loss of maybe loved ones that they've had to walk through grief in isolation. Grief is hard enough, but walking through grief in isolation, I can't even put to words how heartbreaking that is. Because we're meant to be in community. We're meant to come together when there's heartbreak. We're meant to come together when there's grief and loss. And when we don't feel like we can come together, the pain feels deeper and the pain feels wider. And I want to take time to say, can we acknowledge each other? Can we acknowledge each other? Can we say, oh my gosh, let it out? I get it. That makes so much sense that you're feeling that way. And then the third thing is, then we can get into possibilities. Then we can brainstorm new ways of showing up. So we might say, okay, we can't be together for the holidays. Maybe we do a Zoom call. We open presents together. We share our favorite memories, like favorite, Christmas holiday memory. Maybe we share one of the struggles that we're going through. So it's not all roses. Let's talk about what are we struggling with, and then we're going to hold space and we're going to acknowledge those struggles. We're going to say, yeah, that makes sense. You feel super alone and you're really afraid that you don't know when this is going to get better. And to be able to process that as a family and hold that space. Now, I realize not everybody's going to be able to do this, right? That's okay. If you don't have that space, 1, there's therapists out there. 2, there's support groups. And 3, there's journaling, walking, meditating, praying, getting into, volunteering, adopting a pet, which we just did yesterday. We have 3 dogs now. So welcome to COVID.
You actually adopted a new dog versus
We
just
have, yeah,
sponsoring a
we
dog?
actually adopted a dog, retired racing greyhound.
Yeah.
So we're really excited. So one of the things that we're just opening our heart space up and saying, how can I love more? How can I love bigger? How can I be of service? And I can't do that unless I'm tending to my own pain, my own grief, my own loss, my own feelings of anger, sadness, loss, fear. Once we can do that, then that opens us up into possibilities. So 1, it's processing what we feel emotionally. 2, it's acknowledgement. And 3, then we can get into possibilities and solutions, problem solving. What we try to do is we try to focus on the problem and solve the problem. And then we're stuck because we're like, I don't know. I don't feel better. I can't feel better. I don't feel better. Well, we're not going to feel better until we tend to those emotions. It's okay to have your feelings. I want to say that to everybody. It's what are we doing with those feelings? Am I putting them on somebody else? Am I taking my pain and hot potatoing it to somebody else? Am I projecting it onto somebody else, or am I tending to it? Am I nurturing it? Am I saying, yeah, I'm struggling right now, and I'm starting these deeper conversations and with people that can also have those conversations, and then we're holding space for compassion and grace and empathy, because we cannot get through this without offering that up. So when we listen to somebody, we're not trying to fix, rescue, or save them. We're just saying, I'm going to hold the space and I'll be with you in this. I won't jump in the hole with you. What I'll do is I'll hold space, say, I love you, I care about you, and I know you're struggling, and this is not an easy time. So let's just get it out. Let's just process it. Wouldn't that be something if we could come together and change the conversation about mental health, especially right now when there's so much grief and loss? And we need to love one another. This is a tough space. This is a tough time. When you do your own work, you're able to offer that up to other people. So those are the things: process, acknowledgement, possibility, PAP.
PAP. I love it.
PAP.
I love it. Let it out, Noblesville. And I can tell by the comments today, we got some people letting it out, which is great. So I want to acknowledge that. First of all, Blakely, I don't know you, but first time tuning in. Thank you. Thanks to others. Kathy Hines, who's a huge fan and sent me a nice little sweet note the other day, thinking about me, which meant a lot. So you mentioned something about pivoting and being around others. You know, Kristen, one of the cool things I saw this weekend, Santa, speaking of pivoting, Santa and Santa's house this year, not the best idea with COVID. So we scrambled quickly and got a Santa home for the holiday tour where we took Santa out into the neighborhoods, which we're going to continue doing over these next week and a half. But I can tell you, seeing neighbors in their own socially distant space of all ages, just being able to acknowledge face to face with their neighbors and be outside. I saw kids who were excited to see Santa, of course, but I saw elderly who were on their porch just delighted to see Santa, see somebody drive by. That human connection, which I think is so important, and you alluded to that earlier. We're seeing people get really creative ways that we can still do that in a socially distant way. I would encourage anyone, if you can, check on your neighbors. Check on your friends, and especially those that are elderly and isolated. Just to see somebody from a distance makes I think people feel a lot more connected and calm, which is awesome. So I just wanted to point out those two topics. You know, somebody brought up a good point. Mr. Dwayne Caldwell talked about social media and the stress of conflicting information. I thought we might pivot there for a second and talk about social media and how to process it, because you're right. Social media, I can tell you as an elected official, is a double-edged sword. It's great to hear from folks. It's wonderful to get information. People are also a little free to share maybe thoughts they would never tell you face-to-face on social media. We're getting conflicting information about COVID and precautions being taken. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how to handle social media, especially during this time of year, and how we process it?
Yeah, the first thing I want to say is, when you're triggered, pause.
Yeah.
So we have a lot coming at us, a lot of fears, a lot of information that can evoke fear in us, anger in us, disgust in us. The first thing I want to say is take a deep breath, because here we go. We're practicing our deep breaths, because we cannot hear someone unless they're really self-regulated. It's really hard. We will go into a survival state, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. we can explain that later. What happens is we start shutting down. So it's very hard to hear and truly understand where someone's coming from if they're coming at a very activated place. So if they can come at communication in a calmer, more self-regulated place, we can digest that, we can take that in. So the first thing is, if you're triggered, take a deep breath, do not pass go, do not collect $200, do not do anything. If you're a Monopoly fan, what I would invite you to do is write it out, to get it out on a paper. I like paper. If you're going to do it in your notes app on your phone. Write out what you want to say, get out all those emotions, then come back and tweak. What's the main point that I want to say? When people are verbally communicating, this is where I work with couples and families and parents. I ask them to use an I feel statement with a feeling in there. So it would look like, these core emotions that we've been working on. Okay, I'm asking people to do more vulnerable feelings. I feel afraid because I'm afraid that I'm going to get sick if we do Christmas together. I really love you and I want to be with you. Again, acknowledgement sandwich. And I'm really afraid that somehow I'll get you sick or I'll get sick. I'm just giving you an example. When we say I feel with a core emotion in there, we can hear better. So on social media, we're not doing a lot of I feels. We're doing judgment statements. We're doing maybe a triggered response. And then we feel more angry because we don't feel heard. And then the information on social media, it's hit or miss, right? It's hit or miss. Some of it may not be true. Some of it may be true. So if you can check sources, check an authority figure, like a physician, if you're having issues about COVID, or a professional, that helps you discern and decipher the information, because there's a lot of fear out there and it perpetuates more fear. And in order to be heard, it's how are we communicating what we want to say? So again, not everybody's going to hear us, because we can be in that protective state, that defensive state, when we're afraid, when we're petrified, when we're angry, when we're disgusted. And instead, I'm asking everybody to take a deep breath, kind of feel your feet on the floor, ask yourself what you're feeling. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Underneath anger and disgust, I ask people, what else are you feeling? And you know what it is? Fear and sadness. Is that hard to get to? Yeah, because you're so mad. You're so triggered. And I'm like, okay, what are you afraid of? Communicate that. Communicate that. I feel afraid. Boom. Communicate the fear. That's more vulnerable. And people hear that easier. They feel less defensive and more like, okay, that makes sense. Now, they may not agree with you. So this is what I want to tell people. Well, we're not all going to be in agreement, but if we can all hear and listen, it doesn't mean the outcome might change. It means that we at least feel heard, understood, and cared for. So hearing one another is really important right now, and it's critical moving forward. In order to hear, you have to be processing your own feelings, thoughts, body sensations in order to hear somebody else. So then I can come from an open-hearted place. I can listen, and I love my acronym WAIT. Why am I talking? I know I'm talking now because we're doing kind of some psychoeducation, but I do a lot of listening on the other end to try to understand what's the other person feeling, what's really at the root of this. And if we step more into vulnerability and communicate from that place, we can understand one another and hear much more effectively.
I love the acronym WAIT. I'm going to think a lot about that over the next several weeks. That's great to remember. Why am I talking? Good. I love the I feeling statement. And in the interest of being vulnerable, I've said one of the reasons I would do this program is I would share some feelings and some issues that we've been working through in our house. So Julie, Jenson and I have been working through I feel statements a lot this time of year. And one of the areas that we have been working on is that I am from Noblesville. So my whole family is here. My mom, my brothers, everyone's here. Julie's from Columbus, Ohio. So she is feeling a little bit jealous of my relationship with my family right now. And really at the core of that, she's feeling sad that she does not get to see her family during the holidays as much as we get to see mine. So I share that for maybe some couples are going through that as well. There's a little bit of friction on being able to see one side of the family versus another, and that's been very sad for her. This holiday season, not being able to see her parents and her brothers and sister-in-laws and our nieces and nephews on that side versus what we're seeing with my side of the family. So I share that just as a sense of vulnerability for everybody if you're working through that at your house as well.
And I think that's really important to see that you articulated that underneath that is really sadness and grief and a sense of loss. And when you can acknowledge that and hold space and say that makes sense, you feel really sad and you're grieving over that. Now we're processing instead of being in defense mode. So I love that you said that, because now once we process, we can acknowledge, then we can get into possibility.
Yeah.
And so that's the beautiful part of talking about this and having these conversations. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, and one of the things that we've had to work through is that initial, whether it be jealousy or whatever, it comes across as anger towards me. And really, it's not anger towards me, it's sadness for the situation. And that, digging through that has been helpful to us and helpful for me to support her this time of year with that sadness going on. So anyways, one of the things that we also focus on, I want to touch on here this morning, is parental guilt this time of year. And even we'll translate it to grandparental guilt as well. I know we see it sometimes on the weekends when, we may catch ourselves on our phone too much and we should be playing with our kids more. That guilty feeling is really heavy right now because the holidays, our kids aren't getting to do breakfast with Santa the normal way we normally do it. We didn't have the Christmas parade like we normally do. You name it. Things aren't looking the same. How do we work through our guilt as parents and as grandparents this time of year, and how we translate that with our kids?
Yeah. So let's just call a spade a spade. We're all going to have guilt, shame, and anxiety. So this is a key point. Guilt, shame, and anxiety functioned as kind of an inhibitory emotions. They inhibit us because underneath it are those core emotions. So underneath guilt is probably some fear. I'll try to do this on the screen. Fear and some sadness and grief. So when we can say, okay, I feel guilty. Okay, I feel afraid that I'm going to mess up my kids. I feel afraid that they're going to have issues too, which every kid's going to have issues. So this is what I tell everybody. We can't get out of, there's no perfect parent. So welcome. Everybody's going to have their issues. So a lot of it is rooted in fear and sadness, and shame says I'm bad, like I'm defective. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. Guilt says I feel bad about my choices. So shame is about self and guilt is about choices. Guilt can propel us to make change. So if I have enough guilt, I might say, ooh, okay, I'm going to get off my phone. I'm going to put it down. Very hard to do. I'm going to put it down. And shame really takes us into the dark abyss. I call it the shame spiral, where we just feel like crap. We're like, nobody likes me. There's something wrong with me. I'm defective. And the only way out of guilt, shame, and anxiety, here we go. The only way out of guilt, shame, and anxiety is, one, to acknowledge it, two, to process it. So we got the PAP, process, acknowledgement. And three is really compassion, self-compassion, having grace for yourself, forgiving yourself and saying, okay, I'm not perfect. Take a deep breath. What I encourage people to do is, and this is so hard for us, okay, I'm making it sound so easy. No, because we were parented that way sometimes. We weren't given that compassion, that grace to say, it's okay to have your feelings. Okay, let's process them. Let's talk about them and then have them acknowledged. So having empathy and grace for ourselves is really hard. So writing it out to get some clarity, like I feel really guilty, I feel really bad about this, write it out. Then what starts to happen is you get some perspective. Is this like the magic, end all be all? No, we have to process these core emotions in order to get through guilt, shame, and anxiety. You can't get through guilt, shame, and anxiety without identifying what's underneath it. Right? And so a lot of times we don't really want to do that. We're going to go binge on Netflix, drink the wine, go check out on our phone, get on social media. I mean, we shop, we can do be busy, gossip, people please. I mean, the list is endless of all the ways we all move away from what's really going on the inside. And the only way through it is to process an acknowledgement. It's the only way through. And I know that sounds like, come on, can't there be no, there's no other way through until we acknowledge what's really going on the inside. That's where we can get, once we do that, we get calm, clarity, connection. We are just centered because we've processed it. We've released it in a healthy way instead of projecting it on somebody else and making them the reason why we're this way. Until we decide, no, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to be intentional about it. Every single day, I'm intentional about doing my own work. Every single day. Do I want to? No, I'd rather, watch TV. I don't watch TV anymore, but I'd rather do something else, right? Get on my phone than actually feel it, because it's hard. And I cannot tell you, there's no other way to get through guilt until you process those core emotions and get to the other side.
And no amount of presents you buy for your kids or anyone else helps you process that, correct?
No.
Yeah.
Gifts are just a little bit icing on the cake.
Yeah.
How you show up as a human is what matters. How you show up as a human is what makes the biggest difference in the world, in your relationships, and with yourself. That's the only thing I can control. Man, I would sprinkle it out everywhere if I could help people do their work and see the light. I can't do that. I can only show up as me authentically and vulnerably and hope that that makes a difference. That's all I got.
I joke sometimes that, your present is my presence, right? You've heard that statement, but that rings so true this year. Spend time, process your emotions. Why am I talking? Wait, ask those questions. Give yourself some grace. That's been my theme this entire year. Am I perfect at it? No. Have I fired off a few emails last couple of weeks that I maybe wish I wouldn't have hit send on? Yes. But we're going to process through those. We're going to do it together. So we know it's a heavy time of year. And so, Kristen, thank you again for walking us through a whole plethora of topics. Obviously, it struck a nerve because we had some major conversation going on and some great viewership here just during the live show, which is awesome. And that's what we want. Just take a minute to check on yourself and come and share your thoughts with us if you want, or just process what we're giving you to equip you with those tools to go forward. So, Kristen, with that, if I'm in a crisis mode right now, if I'm panicking because I know that I have issues or know someone who is in medically dangerous situations, can we give them some guidance on where to go?
Yeah. First of all, if there's a medical issue, 911.
Right.
Or if you're afraid someone's suicidal, or you're concerned about that, call 911. They can make a call. They can make a call to the home that you're concerned about, the apartment, whatever. And the second thing is, if anybody is suicidal, please call 1-800-273-TALK, and your shame is going to say, no, I'm not doing that. No one cares about me. I am not going to let anybody know what's really going on. I am holding the space for you right now to say, it's okay. You're not the only one. Call the number, or you can text. This is the other thing, 741-741. So if you're like, I don't want to talk on the phone, no problem. You can text. You do not have to do this alone. You do matter. You are important. The shame is going to tell you a different story. It's not true. It will try to convince you that there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Reach out for help. You don't have to walk this alone. If you're here locally and you're struggling with any domestic abuse, violence, please call Prevail. They have a 24-hour hotline at 317-776-3472. There's also Community North, St. Vincent Stress Center, and Fairbanks if you're struggling with addiction. And the overdose hotline is 211. That's 211. So there's a lot of resources out there. There's therapists online now, so you don't have to go out. You can do it all via video. So just know there's support groups out there. There's lots of resources right now that are being beefed up because we are in a mental health crisis. It's important that you know there is help available. There's podcasts out there. So Close the Chapter, that's the one I do every week. You can binge listen to it for free. There's other podcasts out there that have tons of information. You can go back and watch these. Each week, they're all on the City of Noblesville Facebook page. So there's lots of resources out there, books, and don't give up. That's my number one thing. Do not give up.
Yes, we are all in this together and we can get through this. So, Kristen, thank you again to all of our listeners. Thank you. We're all in this together. Hang in there. Happy holidays. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks, the week of Christmas. Maybe a really stressful time for you. I would suggest that you tune in. So, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, Nobles will stay safe. You are worth it. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you so much. Holding space.